Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crossover Mind. Today, we're diving into how AI and robotics are reshaping the very structure of our society. I'm your host, Steve, and as a technology futurist and AI policy researcher, I'll be guiding us through this topic.
And I'm Lisa. I don't know much about this field, so I'll be asking the questions we're all wondering about from a beginner's perspective. Honestly, Steve, I hear about AI changing everything almost every day now, but it still feels kind of abstract. Like, what does it actually mean for how we live?
That's a perfect place to start, Lisa, because I think the best way to understand what's coming is to look at what already happened. Let me take you back a few centuries. Think about a world where the most valued human ability was physical strength. Wars were fought hand to hand. Farming was the backbone of nearly every economy. If you were strong, fast, and physically capable, you had a real advantage in life.
Right, that makes sense. Being athletic wasn't just a nice to have, it was basically a survival skill.
Exactly. But then machines came along. Agricultural machines replaced farmhands. Industrial machines replaced manual laborers. Weapons evolved so that physical combat became less central to warfare. Over time, raw physical ability stopped being the defining factor for success in society. And here's the part I find really fascinating. Today, people actually pay money to go to the gym and deliberately exercise their bodies. Think about how strange that would seem to a medieval farmer who spent every waking hour doing back-breaking labor. The idea that you'd voluntarily lift heavy things for fun would be completely absurd to them.
That's such a funny way to think about it. So you're saying that once machines took over physical work, physical strength became more of a hobby than a necessity?
Precisely. Physical labor jobs still exist, of course, but the social importance of being physically strong has fundamentally shifted. It went from being an economic necessity to being a lifestyle choice. And this is the lens I want you to use as we talk about what AI is doing to intellectual work right now.
Oh, so you're saying that AI is going to do to brain work what machines did to physical work?
That's the core argument, yes. And I think the parallel is remarkably tight. Let me explain why. Computers have been around for decades, and they've massively increased productivity. But here's the thing that people often overlook. Traditional computers, no matter how powerful, needed a human operator. Someone had to write the code, run the analysis, design the spreadsheet, interpret the data. That's why education and specialized knowledge became so valuable. You needed trained humans to operate these powerful tools.
So the computer was like a really powerful hammer, but you still needed a skilled person to swing it.
That's a wonderful analogy, and it's spot on. Now, what makes AI fundamentally different from every computing tool that came before it is that AI can operate the computer autonomously. It doesn't just wait for instructions and execute them step by step. It can understand goals, break down problems, generate solutions, and iterate on its own output. That changes the equation entirely.
So it's not just a better hammer, it's more like a carpenter who can build the whole house on its own?
Yes, and a carpenter who never sleeps, never takes a break, and is getting better at its job every single day. Now think about what that means for the knowledge economy. For the last century or so, we've built our entire social structure around the idea that intellectual ability is the most valuable thing a person can have. Go to school, get good grades, earn a degree, land a knowledge worker job. That's been the formula. But if AI can perform intellectual tasks at or above the level of a PhD holder, and it can do so continuously and at scale, then the current way we evaluate human worth in the economy starts to break down.
That's a pretty unsettling thought. So does that mean all our education is going to become pointless?
Not pointless, but its role changes dramatically. Think about it this way. Remember the gym analogy? Nobody says lifting weights is pointless. It's great for your health. It builds discipline. It can be deeply satisfying. But almost nobody lifts weights because their job requires them to carry heavy objects anymore. I think academic learning is heading in the same direction. People will still study mathematics or philosophy or literature, and they'll benefit from it personally and intellectually. But the economic necessity of that knowledge, the idea that you need a specific degree to perform a specific job, that's what erodes.
So studying would become like going to the gym. You do it because you enjoy it or because it's good for you, not because your livelihood depends on it?
That's exactly the analogy. And I think it's important to distinguish this from earlier waves of technological anxiety. When smartphones came along, some people asked whether traditional education still mattered. But that was a different situation entirely, because smartphones still required humans to operate them. You still needed to know what to search for, how to interpret information, how to apply it.
AI removes that intermediary step. You can describe what you want, and the AI produces the output. The middle steps, the ones that humans used to perform, get absorbed into the neural network itself.
When you say the middle steps disappear, can you give me a concrete example of what that looks like?
Sure. Think about making a website today. Traditionally, you'd need to learn HTML, CSS, maybe JavaScript. You'd need to understand design principles. You might use tools like Figma for mockups and then translate those into code. Each of those is an intermediate step, a skill a human needed to learn and perform. With advanced AI, you can simply describe what you want the website to look like and do, and it generates the whole thing. The intermediate craft, the coding, the design translation, happens inside the AI. You go from intention to output with nothing in between that requires human expertise.
That makes it really concrete, but I've seen a lot of courses popping up about how to use AI effectively, like prompt engineering and things like that. Isn't learning to use AI the new skill?
This is a really important point, and I think a lot of people are falling into a trap here. Yes, right now there's a transitional phase where knowing how to talk to AI, how to frame your requests gives you an advantage. But this phase is likely to be extremely short-lived, possibly just a year or two. The AI systems themselves are evolving so rapidly that the way you interact with them today might be completely different 6 months from now. And beyond that, we're approaching a point where you might not even need to use AI in the traditional sense. As these systems become capable of improving their own models, of running iteratively until they achieve the desired outcome, the interface itself changes. The idea of carefully crafting a prompt becomes as quaint as manually programming a VCR.
So you're saying that learning prompt engineering right now is kind of like learning to operate a rotary phone. It might be useful for a moment, but the whole paradigm is about to shift.
That's a great way to put it. And this connects to something happening at the biggest tech companies right now. They're already rethinking interfaces entirely. If AI handles all the intermediate processing, then the entire user experience needs to be redesigned around that reality. Instead of navigating complex menus and options, you simply state your intent and receive a result. The interface becomes a conversation rather than a control panel.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about intellectual work, but what about physical work? AI is software. It lives in computers. How does this translate to the physical world?
This is where robotics enters the picture, and it's already happening in ways most people haven't fully registered. Let me give you an everyday example. Have you been to a family restaurant recently? One of those casual dining chains?
Yeah, actually. And come to think of it, last time I went, a little robot brought the food to our table.
Exactly. Now that robot doesn't look like a person. It's basically a wheeled cart with some sensors. Because it doesn't look humanoid, people tend not to think of it as a major disruption. But stop and think about what it replaced. That serving route used to be handled by 1 or 2 part-time workers. Those jobs are simply gone, absorbed by a machine that works every shift without breaks or wages. And nobody really noticed or protested because it happened gradually and the robot looked like a piece of furniture rather than a replacement worker.
That's kind of eerie when you think about it. So the change is already here, we're just not recognizing it because the robots don't look like the ones in movies.
Exactly right. And this highlights a misconception in the current investment world. There's a lot of buzz around what's called physical AI, and much of the conversation focuses on humanoid robots, machines that look and move like people. That's captured the public imagination, but it's also set an unnecessarily high bar. Humanoid form is only necessary when a robot needs to operate in spaces designed exclusively for human bodies. If you're building a new warehouse or factory from scratch, you can design the space around the robots, and they can take whatever shape is most efficient. Amazon is already doing this. Their fulfillment centers use non-humanoid robots for picking, sorting, and transporting goods, and they're remarkably effective.
So it's not really about making a robot that looks like a person. It's about making a robot that can do the job, whatever shape that takes.
Precisely. And here's the key insight that ties the software and hardware sides together. On the software side, AI can already operate autonomously within computer systems. It can write code, manage data, make decisions. What's still developing is the physical container, what you might call the vessel or the body, that allows AI to interact with the physical world. Once that hardware catches up, and it will, you have a complete picture. AI handles the thinking and robotic bodies handle the doing. The entire loop of human labor, both mental and physical, becomes automatable.
That sounds like science fiction, honestly. I mean, is this really going to happen, or is it one of those futuristic predictions that never quite materializes?
I completely understand that skepticism, and it's a very natural human response. But history is full of moments where people couldn't imagine the next leap. When television first appeared, having one in every home seemed extravagant. The idea that TVs would eventually become as thin as a magazine was laughable. Or think about handheld gaming. The original Game Boy ate through batteries at an alarming rate. People at the time couldn't have imagined a device with stunning graphics that runs all day on a single charge. But improvements in chip efficiency and battery technology like lithium-ion cells made it happen. Hardware evolves more slowly than software, that's true, but it evolves relentlessly, and each generation compounds on the last.
That's a fair point. We do tend to underestimate how much things can change over time. But let me ask you about something more tangible. If the way we work and learn changes this dramatically, does that affect where we live?
This is one of the most underappreciated consequences of the AI and robotics revolution, and I'm glad you brought it up. Think about why land has the value it does today. A plot of land in central Tokyo is astronomically expensive compared to rural farmland a few hours away. Why? Because Tokyo is where the jobs are, where the government institutions are, where transportation networks converge. The closer you are to those hubs, the more you pay. The value of land is essentially a function of proximity to opportunity.
Right, that's just supply and demand based on location. So are you saying that formula changes?
Potentially in a very significant way. If AI transforms how we work so that physical presence at an office becomes less necessary, and if it transforms education so that attending a specific institution matters less, then one of the biggest reasons people pay premium prices to live near urban centers starts to weaken. And then layer on autonomous vehicles and advanced mobility. Right now, your commuting options are trains, buses, taxis, or driving yourself. If self-driving vehicles can safely and efficiently transport you, the friction of distance drops dramatically. A home that's an hour from the city center today might effectively feel like it's 15 minutes away if you can sleep or work productively during the ride.
So does that mean everyone's going to move to the countryside and rural land prices are going to skyrocket?
That's the kind of extreme conclusion it's tempting to jump to. But reality is more nuanced than that. Here's why. The value of where you live isn't just about your job or your commute. It's also deeply tied to the administrative services your local government provides. Things like healthcare infrastructure, school quality, public safety, community services, these all depend on the financial health of your municipality. A wealthy city can provide excellent public services. A struggling rural town may not be able to, regardless of how easy it is to get there. So people aren't going to abandon cities overnight.
So it's not that cities become worthless. It's more that within a given region, people might have a wider range of options for where exactly they live.
Exactly. Think of it as the circle of viable living options expanding within the boundaries of a given administrative region. Within a prefecture or a metro area that provides good public services, locations that were previously considered too remote or inconvenient could become attractive. A neighborhood that was undervalued because it was far from the train station might gain value if autonomous vehicles eliminate the need to be near one. Meanwhile, the premium that the most central, most connected spots command might soften somewhat because the advantage of being right next to everything becomes less decisive. The overall effect is a redistribution of value within regions rather than a dramatic urban-to-rural migration.
That's really interesting. It's like the playing field gets leveled a bit within each area, even if the big picture differences between regions stay roughly the same.
That's a very good way to summarize it. And I think this brings us to the bigger picture of everything we've discussed today. We're living through a transition that rhymes with the Industrial Revolution, but operates on a different axis. The Industrial Revolution shifted value away from physical labor. The AI revolution is shifting value away from intellectual labor. Both transitions are disorienting while they're happening, and both ultimately reshape where people live, what they aspire to, how they educate their children, and what they consider meaningful work.
So if I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this, here's what I'm taking away. Physical labor was once essential, and machines turned it into something optional, even recreational. Now AI is doing the same thing to mental labor. The skills and degrees we've been told to chase might become more like hobbies than career necessities. The robots replacing physical jobs don't need to look human. They're already here in forms we barely notice. Learning to use AI as a tool might be a phase that passes faster than we think, because AI is evolving toward doing things autonomously. And the way we think about where to live, the whole relationship between location and opportunity, is likely to shift, though not as dramatically as the most extreme predictions suggest.
That's an excellent summary, Lisa. And if I could add one thought to leave our listeners with, it's this. These changes aren't coming in some distant speculative future. Many of them are already underway. The serving robot at the restaurant, the AI that writes code, the conversations happening at tech companies about redesigning hair faces, these are all present tense realities. The challenge for all of us is to recognize these shifts as they happen, rather than only seeing them in hindsight. Because the people who understand the direction of the current will navigate it far more effectively than those who pretend it isn't flowing.
That's a really powerful way to think about it.
I feel like I came in today with a vague sense that AI was going to change things, and now I have a much clearer framework for understanding how and why. Thanks for walking us through all of this, Steve.
Thank you for joining us again on Crossover Mind. We hope this helped clarify things. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, goodbye.